What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lost at Sea. This time we're going to revisit a little trip we made last Easter up to Mount Shasta and check out some of the trippy shit we found around there.
Yeah, it was cold as shit still, and we had made some plans to go check out Shasta, but the hike was brutal and freezing, so we kind of had looked at some other spots, and that's the main one that we checked out.
Castle Crags is what it's known as now, and the old natives used to call it Adobe of the Devil.
El Diablo.
So you can see it's just a little south of Shasta, and it's pretty fucking epic. And I'd just gotten Nikon P1000, and it has a super zoom, so a bunch of these pics are going to be like 125 times zoom. And just to say before we get going, I had just got it when I took these pictures, so forgive the out of focus or whatever.
Oh, they're great.
But anyways, back to the subject at hand.
Yeah, so we found this plateau, and from this plateau you could see all the crags up there, as you're seeing as well. You could also see Shasta from there. It was an awesome view. I think it was like a small fee to get into the actual park, and there's maybe like a 5-10 minute hike to this little plateau overlook.
That was tight. It was super dead too. There's hardly anybody there. Just to drop a little of the history and a little bit of the lore and myths of the area. The natives talk about giants who lived in this area. There's some petroglyphs that were found by some kids. I believe it was in the 60s maybe, or the 80s, and most people seem to believe that those were left over from Lemuria, and that this is possibly still Lemuria.
I know there's a lot of that caves to Lemuria stuff going on with Shasta and the underground systems around there. I mean, there's tons of theories abound.
Yeah, Talos, I believe, is the name of the city that's in Shasta, which is a Lemurian city, supposedly. And if you see anybody wearing purple up in the town of Shasta City, supposedly that means they're a Lemurian.
Purple's a good color.
Fun fact.
So all of these close-ups here are just like all part of that Castle Crags plateau. I mean, it's going to get a lot more in-depth here in a minute.
Yeah, we saved the good stuff for the last, so you guys are going to have to watch everything. Oh, and a nice little fun fact about the zone, too. Battle Rock, basically Joaquin Miller, the great poet of the West, him and some of his cronies slaughtered a bunch of the natives up in this area, and that was a plaque to celebrate it, I guess. I mean, why else would you put a plaque there?
Did you notice the E. clampus vitus on the plaque?
Yes.
Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Ding, ding.
Oh, that's a marker. We made it hiking around on some cool stuff.
The Pacific Crest Trail passes right through there.
Yeah, we hiked it for about a mile just to say we did. Because we did. So here's some more close-ups of the crags. I mean, kind of trying to illustrate here some of like the shapes of these things and what they look like to you.
Right, and that, that like there's the whole pareidolia, or however you say it.
Pareidolia?
Yeah, where you see faces or stuff in objects, and this is definitely a prime place for that. And I think, as far as anyone who's into the melted buildings theory, I mean, this place has melted building written all over it, if you're into that kind of thing.
One of the first things I thought when we walked up to it immediately was the hydraulic mining factor. Like, that to me looks like, something that could have been a possibility up there.
For sure.
There was trails that, they said you could go up to the crags, but
I believe Castle Dome is a big dome in the front. And, just the fact that it's called a castle.
You got the old pillars, the spires, if you will.
Yeah, it does look like a melted castle for sure. If you looked at, I was watching like an anime, or someone did a drawing of a melted castle,
some turrets or something, or hey, Rapunzel, let your hair down. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's so many different kind of textures on this thing. It's not all one like style of mountain or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, you've got this giant smooth area. It looks like there's some downward movement going on over time, and then sharp, jagged points.
This thing looks like a turtle head to me. When you want to get into the old pareidolia thing or whatever.
Yeah, we got a petrified tortoise that carried the world on its back.
And then we have these real huge sheer walls.
Cut with what? Well, what is this?
I don't know. It's a weird flat part of this mountain. You start to think it's, a wall when you see that kind of geometry,
Yeah, definitely.
At least in nature. And we're going to get into that stuff later.
There's some of the power line trails,
Look closely, you might see a Sasquatch in there somewhere. So another little tidbit about this area, and this small ass little town here to the east is the private residence of the Hearst family. And you might know them from the Hearst Castle that's down in San Simeon. And, they were the big publication fucking controllers. But this is where they had their private home, and it's still there. It's on private residence.
It's extremely isolated. Looking it up, basically you can get a view of it if you take a river rafting guided trip and possibly get off the raft somehow to get into this spot. But it's there physically. We didn't see it, but...
And,
hey.
Yeah, we didn't take the kayak trip, so you got to live with these old photos. But it was supposedly the architects were Bernard Maybeck and Willis Polk, who are both come up a shitload in the San Francisco Bay Area. Narrative, yes. And then even to top it off, it was rebuilt by Julia Morgan, who was the architect of the Hearst Castle in San Simeon. And we know all those names because they were all part of the City Beautiful movement, who were the inheritors of a lot of these buildings. And I get a lot deeper into the City Beautiful movement in the podcast episode I do with on the Deep Share podcast. So look that up on YouTube, because I put up tons of visuals and we get super deep into that whole subject.
begin. Beautiful Dunsmuir.
Yeah, so this is just a quiet, tiny little old mining town, but it has a bunch of weird, old shit in it, old facts.
Some old bricks, baby.
There's tons of old bricks, like this building here. It says it was I.R. Wells building, 1903.
And this is like one of the first buildings you kind of come in off the main thoroughfare by the train tracks that you see. And it immediately stood out to us just because of the front and the side. What we always see, the red brick covered up with some kind of floated plaster or stucco or some garbage.
Right, and it changes the look of it 1,000,000%, and it's not that hard to do.
And then you see this all over this town. Here's a fun fact. When we rolled up and parked, there was this like trimmigrant, if you know the lingo, a dude rolling around trimming weeds, some new age hippie freak, and he was trying to fight one of the local residents right in front of this coffee shop. It was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, he was screaming
"Hey, buddy,"
about how all people do is just scream and do nothing. It was hilarious.
So here's a really cool building, like right up the way from that coffee shop that we suggest if you're going through Dunsmuir. This is on the main strip here towards the end. It's pretty fucking crazy.
You can't miss it. Just a classic gigantic brick building. And this one's cool because the brick building here on the right, where you can see that goes, it's cut down underneath the street. Like, that makes absolutely no fucking sense. But this hotel here, you can tell this is a brick building, and I didn't have any old pictures I put in here, but they repainted it, and now it looks like some modern piece of shit.
Some Art Deco thing. We have some retaining walls or old foundations, and this town is filled with these things all throughout the place.
That's just interesting.
And there's a main train depot down here as well. So there's a lot going on in this seemingly little town.
Right. The town kind of died when the switch to diesel trains came, and I think the nickel mine dried up or whatever.
There's all kinds of that sort of opulent looking fountain type of features in this town.
And in classic history, just listen to these crazy events that have happened here. In 1902, an avalanche came through the town and wiped it away. In 1903, most of the town burned down. 1921, a big hotel fire. 1924, a big fire took down 2 churches. In 1974, a flood floated houses away. They've had a rough time there.
I mean, one thing, just walking around the town, you can physically see like layers and layers and layers just of stuff built on top of other stuff, stitched together. This whole place is bizarre.
Right, like here you have bricks painted white, and then you have those other bricks put right on top of them.
And all this kind of old world stuff as well. It's a really cool mix and clash of a bunch of different timelines and resets. And it's all just within... We walked around this town in like an hour and a half, and we probably missed some stuff for sure, but we tried to find as much as we could, and we found a lot.
Yeah,
it was fun. We suggest to anybody, if you're passing through going to Oregon or something, to stop in Dunsmuir and just go get a cup of coffee and look at some hippies talk about it.
These were just some
What was
mountains
that mountain
that look
called?
like spoil tips.
That was right
I
outside of Weed.
All right, so here we're getting into the good stuff. And you see with this arrow, this is where we're going to focus on with the zoom. And you get this kind of courtyard area with all just these rock structures that don't really fit in with anywhere else in this entire rock formation. And I don't know, you guys, I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments, because to me it looks like the maybe possible wall structures.
I mean, we all see what we want to see at times, but initially when I first saw this, it took me a minute to really like focus in on what initially I was looking at. But after a while, it kind of became clear.
I mean, those look like statues.
Yeah.
Kinda, you know what I mean?
There's another thing that came to mind with this whole plateau, or the crags themselves. But that if we're seeing, you know, nature has a way, these trees are growing out of stone, which we know happens, it's a thing. But that we'll go with the theory that mountains and plateaus are gigantic old trees. Like, what then would be Shasta? What would be the Castle Crags? You know, do you open your mind to these possibilities?
Right, yeah, we could be looking at a giant fucking chopped down silicon tree or whatever.
Yeah.
We could be looking at a giant petrified castle. We could just be looking at a giant rock formation.
And so here,
yeah,
this was the main picture we're talking about.
This was a little, looks like a tunnel with lights or eyes or whatever.
There's something down there.
That was weird. As you can see in this picture, it's not there. And this was there's 2 days that these pictures are from, so I don't know. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Is this ruins of like a courtyard or whatever, or
does this look like petrified old growth?
it's about to get better here too. This is just kind of above that area. Just trying to see if I could get anything else, you know. But I don't know. That shit's a trip, dude. That is a trip. It does not look natural. So this next part here we're zooming in on is it's like a more forested area, and if you look right here in the middle, there's just a giant trunk or pillar here, and it caught my eye because it's way bigger than any of the other trees there, and it also looks like a fucking pillar or something. You know what I mean? And
it's massive. I think due to a lot of the local wildfires, a lot of this greenery that you see around the area is somewhat new growth, and then you see
no doubt
something like that going on, and it's like, how fucking big was that tree right there?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a tree, I mean, look at it. I mean, look how massive it is compared to the rest of them, just in height and in the width. You know, if you start taking into account the old stories of the giants and stuff, like is this a pillar or something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It definitely looks like a tree, but who knows?
It's a gigantic space needle.
Yeah. We'd love to hear what you guys think.
Thanks for checking it out.
We love you guys.
Yep.
Keep watching. Keep sending us messages. Keep sending love.
We're out here trekking in the wilderness, knocking on trees, looking for Bigfoot at the same time. He didn't come out.
All right. Until next time.
Yahweh.
Peace.